Welcome to the CAD Office Training Guide series for FDOTConnect. I am Todd Holt, CAD Applications Training Coordinator. Today I will be going through the Roadway Design Existing Modeling Guide. In this series of videos, I will take you step by step through each exercise from the guide. Today we will start with Chapter 3 of the guide, which will go over right-of-way lines. This guide will go over the fundamentals of creating a 3D model for existing features to include hard surfaces such as asphalt, concrete, sidewalks, curbs, existing utilities, existing drainage structures, soil borings, and right-of-way. Participants will be introduced to the Bentley OpenRaods Designer Connect Edition OpenRaods technology tools for design and modeling, specifically for an FDOT project using FDOTConnect workspace. Let's begin. Topics covered. We'll create an RWDTRD file. We will copy the existing and proposed right-of-way lines into the RWDTRD file. We'll then create roadway right-of-way features. And then we'll add existing ground as a profile so that we can view our right-of-way lines in a dynamic cross-section. Let's jump into OpenRaods Designer. Chapter 3 of the Roadway Design Existing Modeling Guide. We're going to review Chapter 3, which will be the existing right-of-way lines. These exercises will introduce the user to the process of bringing in the existing right-of-way lines and proposed into an RWDTRD file. This will be done so that right-of-way cells will show in the different cross-sections. So I've launched FDOTConnect from the desktop folder by clicking on the icon. I'm in our 220-495-55201 underbar CE project or work set, and I've launched the blank file. So from the blank file, we're going to start exercise 3.1, and we're going to create our RWDT file. So I'm going to go to the OpenRaods Modeling workflow, which we can find that up at the top left. I'll navigate to the FDOT tab on the ribbon, and then we have the Actions group, and we're going to use the Create File tool. We'll click on the Create File. It'll put us into our work set. We want to make sure the discipline is set to Roadway. Our file group will be set to Roadway Design Files. So again, we're in the Roadway discipline, and the file group will be Roadway Design Files. And then we're going to come down to our base file and find the RWDTRD file and click on that. And we can use the modifier, optional modifier if we want. I'm not going to on this example, but just working our way down through the Create File tool. The output folder will put us in the roadway folder, and the seed file is predefined. We can then check our county, which is set correctly to Wakulla. If this was not, we can set the county, and that will set our coordinate system. Once that is all set, we will come down and click on the Create and Open File. That will take us into our RWDTRD file. The next step is we want to verify that we're in the newly created the RWDTRD file, which we are. So we're done with the Create File tool, so I'm going to go ahead and click Close. And that will take us to exercise 3.2. At exercise 3.2, we're going to copy existing and proposed right-of-way lines into the RWDTRD file. There's a note on the top of, or at the start of exercise 3.2, that we need to verify where the right-of-way lines are coming from. There could be two sources of where they are. Usually it'll be your SERVRD file, but if not, you'll get a RW, a 7-digit number .dgn from right-of-way mapping. In our case, we have the RW, the 7-digit, so it'd be RW220495501.dgn. So this is something that you would need to verify with your project manager at the start of your project where these right-of-way lines are. Again, usually they're coming from the ServRD. But for this example, for this data set, we're going to use the RW220495.501.ggn. The process is the same. We're just using a different file to do that. So let's go ahead and attach that RW2204995501. So I'm going to go to the Home tab of the ribbon. Under my primary group, I'm going to use the attach tools to bring up the reference dialog. And then I'm going to go and attach a reference. I'll navigate up one folder. When we open the reference dialog, it puts us into the roadway folder of our work set. So I'm going to go up one folder to the root of the project and then double click on the RW map. And I'm going to go ahead and attach the RW220495.5 file. So I'll click open on that. I'll give it a logical name of ROW for the right-of-way lines. Detail scale will match the detail that I'm coming into, so everything else is set good. I'll click OK and then fit view. So there's a little bit of cleanup that we need to do in our levels for the reference that we just attached. So we'll go to our level display, bring that over. So we're in the RWDT. Yours may be 01. So I'm going to go to the right-of-way line or file that I just attached. So we'll go to the right-of-way line, right-of-way 220495 that we just attached. We're going to turn everything off except for the right-of-way line and right-of-way line existing. To do that, we can right-click and do all off and then turn these on. There's multiple ways to do that. That was the easiest, so just right-clicked. I turned all off, and then I turned back on the right-of-way lines. So that will set up our file of that, and then we can fit view. So that's setting up the file. We'll then go to the FDOT tab. We'll go to the Actions group, and then under Miscellaneous Tools, we're going to use a new tool for copy reference levels. So we'll copy reference levels that's found under the Miscellaneous Tools of the Action group on the FDOT tab. So again, we're on the FDOT tab, the Actions group. We'll go to Miscellaneous Tools, and this is a split button. So we'll click on the down arrow. That'll bring up a list of tools. We're going to use the copy reference levels. So we'll click on that. That'll bring up this dialog. And how this dialog works is you have available levels to process on your left-hand side. We'll want to get those over to the right-hand side. And we can do that by clicking on the plus or minus if we want to remove. So we'll scroll down in the list of available levels. We'll find the RW line. And then if I hold the control key, I'll find the RW line underbar EP. So we have our existing line, right-of-way lines, and our proposed. And then we'll click the plus to move it over to the level of the process. And then we'll click the process button. This may take a few seconds or maybe up to a minute depending on the size of the file or the levels that you're copying over, but it shouldn't take too long. And getting back, you'll see that we now have our right-of-way lines existing and proposed in the file. So we're done with the copy reference file levels, so we can close that. So that was exercise 3.2, where we copied in our right-of-way lines proposed and right-of-way lines existing. So we'll move on to exercise 3.3, steps to create the roadway right-of-way features. So a note at the top of exercise 3.3, there will be two main steps in the process of converting the right-of-way lines, both our existing and proposed, to features. Well, first, Complx a chain is created, and then a feature definition is set. This exercise will break down those steps. So again, we're on exercise 3.3. which will introduce a new workflow. So we're going to go up to the top left of our OpenRaods Designer up here and switch the workflow. So we'll click on the drop down. We'll want to go to the drawing workflow. So we'll click on that. And when we do that, you'll see a new set of tools coming up on the Home tab. So this is the drawing workflow and the tools that are valid for this workflow. We'll want to switch to the Home tab, which is the first tab on the drawing workflow. So we'll switch to Home. We're going to come over to the Groups group, and we're going to use the Create Complex Chain tool to complex our right-of-way lines together. But before we do that, we'll want to set our level, and we'll do this for existing and then repeat the process for proposed. So I can use the same tool group here. I'll go to the Modify group on the ribbon and then click on the split button for the attributes. And I want to smart match my attribute, which will set my level. And I'll pick on one of my right-of-way lines, existing. You'll notice when I did that, my right-of-way level, or the level was set to right-of-way. So I just made that an active level. Another note, I'm going to isolate my right-of-way line existing. So I'm going to turn off my proposed. So I'll go to the level display. And again, this can be used by the function key F9. For this, I'll just go on that. So you'll see that I have two levels in this file. I'm going to turn off the right-of-way lines for proposed. And if I move this over to the right, we'll now see that all I have is the existing. So I'm going to isolate them by turning that level off for the right-of-way line, just focusing on the existing right-of-way lines for my level display. So I'll go ahead and close that. I'll go back up to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Groups group, and we'll pick Create Complex Chain. And what we're going to do is create complex chain out of these right-of-way lines. So a little on the Create Complex Chain dialog, we're going to switch the method from manual to automatic, and then we're going to set the maximum gap to a 0.1. And if you'd like, you can check on the simplified geometry. I'm not going to. I'm just going to let this tool run through and kind of see the results that we get. So that is an option to simplify geometry if you need to. So at this point, I've set up my toolbox. I've changed my method from manual to automatic, and I set a maximum gap to 0.1. You may have to adjust the maximum gap. Just kind of play around with that. What that does is it defines the gap between lines. So once that's set, all we do is go in and select our elements, and if I zoom in here, we'll see that it gives me a highlighted color. So I can select that, it'll highlight it. It's going to complex all this line together. So I'll just go through and left click in data point, connecting those. So you'll see that this line will go up here, and when I left click in data point, so it's connecting that, creating a complex element or a complex chain out of right-of-way line elements. I'll do this one, and then left click data point. This is the nice thing about the automatic is it will do it for you. If it was set to manual, I'd have to go and click on all these lines. So complex that, and complex all my right-of-way lines. And zoom out, complex those together. Come this way and that may be just verifying a different gap in there. So let me change it to 0.5 and see if that will help on some of these lines. And if I right click, it'll take me out of the tool. and you'll see that. So just adjusting that gap will help you create that too. So that's something to play around with and just experiment with. There's not really a good, I think, rule of thumb, either 0.5 or a 1 foot gap. So 6 inches to 1 feet or 0.1, anywhere from there. So it can just range that you do it. So once we have that done, we've done it for all the right-of-way existing. So, and we can verify it just by hovering over our lines. And we'll notice that it's a complex chain, it's an arc, and it's on the right-of-way level. So we have those. So let's repeat that process for our proposed. So I'll go back to my level display. I'll turn back on the right-of-way lines, and I'll double click on that to make that active, and then turn off the right-of-way line underbar EP, which is my existing. So I'm going to turn those off. And again, I'm doing this just to isolate my levels and make it easier to work for this process. So again, we'll do the automatic method. Maximum gap will be 0.5, and then we can simplify geometry, and we'll just go and start creating our proposed complex chains, our complex chain for the right-of-way proposed lines. So in this one, so let me change that to 1 and see if that'll jump that gap. It doesn't, so we may have to come in and adjust a little bit on some of these. And we can just do that by clicking on the element, bringing up the manipulators, and connecting some of the lines. So we can verify some of those. So we'll go up and do that one on this one too. So just little tips and tricks to kind of go through and see. I'm not going to worry about these lines, but let's go back to our create complex chain and simplify geometry is checked, and then I'll come back and click on that and data point. Now you'll see that it goes and connects it. Zoom out, zoom back in. Let's get this line there and that one, and then that, and our last, which is those. So we've just went through exercise 3.3. In this exercise, we changed our workflow to the drawing workflow. We're on the Home tab. We're at the Groups group and using the Create Complex Chain to create complex chains out of our feature or our lines, so we can set features on them and then view them in the cross section. So we did that for both our proposed and our existing. So let me turn those back on. Again, close it off. So now we are ready to set feature definitions on our elements. So to do that, we're going to go back and switch our workflows. So we're going to go up and change our workflow from the drawing workflow and click the split button. We're going to go back to the OpenRaods Modeling workflow, which will give us new tools. We're going to go to the Geometry tab, and we're going to use from the General Tools group, we're going to set feature definition. So we can bring that up. The dialog, the feature type, we'll set that to linear, and then we'll need to set a feature definition for this. And the feature definitions that we'll use will be right-of-way lines for existing and right-of-way lines for proposed from the roadway folder. So we can go ahead and click on the split button. We'll go to the linear group, roadway design, plan and profile 2D lines, and we've categorized these into the different components. For organization, we're going to go into the right-of-way items, and then we'll pick, for the first example, it's going to be the right-of-way line existing feature definition, and we'll set that. So we could go in and individually select these, and that's one process, but I just wanted to show getting the tool set up and to show you an easier process to do. So we can close the tool and hit escape. That'll bring us back to our element selection. So what I want to do first is create a selection set. So I'll right click, I'm going to use select all on level by element, which will be up in our top of our right click menu, and select that. And now I'll go and select my right away existing lines. So once I have those selected, then I'll want to come up to my general tools group under the standards and click on that split button and click on the set feature definition. And you'll notice, since this is a split button, it will take me or remembers the last tool that was used, so I could just click on this also. But I get used to clicking on the little drop downs beside it to pick the set feature definition. We already set this up, so that's correct. If you hadn't set this up, we would go to the feature type, set that to linear, the feature definition. We would go and set that to the right-of-way line existing. You'll notice by my cursor, if I move that over there, at this point, all I have to do is data point to apply the feature definition to the 31 selected items. So what that means with that selection set, we've created that. We're going to apply this feature definition to the 31 items that are selected. So I can left click data point in space. And now if I hover over my right-of-way lines, you'll see that they've changed from the complex chain to a feature definition. And that dialog has changed for the cursor beside it. We'll repeat that process for the proposed. So again, we'll do a right click. We'll select all on level by element. So do a right click. I'll select all on level by element, and then I'll want to select my complex chain line string or the level, the RW line, which is my right-of-way line. That'll create a selection set of my proposed, and we'll see in the dialog. And then go back up to the general tools and the standards. I'll just click on that. That'll bring up the tool. So our feature type again is linear, but this time we're going to change our feature definition from right-of-way existing to right-of-way proposed. Let me go back to that. So it remembers the location that we were in, but if not, we would go to the linear group, go to roadway design folder, the plan and profile, 2D lines, and then down to the right-of-way items, and we'll pick on the right-of-way line proposed feature definition. So once that's set, this time we have a data set created or selection set created for a proposed, but we only have 15 items, so I'm going to left click data point to apply this feature definition to those. And then left click again to clear, and if we hover over our existing or proposed, we now notice that this feature has changed, or the elements have changed to features. So we've applied that. So again, the process for this part of this exercise is we will create a selection set of our right-of-way lines. We'll go to the general tools group up here and use from the split button, we're going to set the feature definition for both our right-of-way existing and right-of-way proposed. So that is setting the feature definition. The next step in exercise 3.4, we have our featureized lines. We need to add an existing ground file so we can set profiles on it. So we'll come back to the Home tab. We'll go to the primary group and the attached tools. And we want to attach our existing ground. And that can either be found in the serve RD or from the previous exercise that we've had here. From this guide, we created a GDTM RD file, and that's what I'm going to attach. So I'll go to the attach reference. I'll go up one folder to the root of the project and the 220 Our GDTM RD is going to be found in the survey folder. So I'll open that one and I'll click on, I have 2 of them here. You may just have one, so or however many that you've created. So I'm going to pick on the GDTM RD01. I'll click and open that. And the reference attachment will be brought up. We're attaching the GDTM RD file. I'll give that a logical name of GDTM for existing ground, and then click OK. So using the attached references from the primary group, we just attached our GDTM RD file for the existing ground. I'll then want to come in and set that active. So I want to come over and hover on the boundary area of it, and this is exercise 3.4, continuing. So I'll select the boundary and then hover over it. That'll bring up my context menu. I can bring up the properties to view that. We have set as active terrain model, and then you have different export terrain models options. The icon that we're going to use is the second icon, which is the set as active terrain model. So I'm going to click on that. That will create a, if I go to my models dialog for my primary group, what that will do is create a default 3D. So now we've introduced a 3D model into our RWDT-RD file, which is a 2D design. So again, all I did on that is I selected the boundary and then hover over it, and we'll see a context menu or a right-click menu on there, and we have properties, and this time it's a clear active. And again, the export options, different export options that we explored in a previous exercise. So if I bring up that context menu again, I could clear the active terrain. So if I do that, so now I don't have a terrain active. And that's very vital when you're getting into the 3D, is you may have different terrains that you're trying to apply or get, but you need an active terrain to use a lot of the 3D modeling tools, which we'll go over that more in the Roadway Design 3D Modeling Guide. So again, I will select it and hover and set as active terrain. From this point, I'm going to right click in space and hold and bring up my context menu, right click option. This time I will go to the view control group, and we're going to set up our views. In this, we're going to use the default 2 views, plan in 3D. So I'm going to go to 2 views, plan in 3D. And that'll bring up my view 1 will be my plan view. And if I click on the view 2 to make that active, my view 2 is my default 3D. And all we'll see there is that existing ground. So I can fit view and then fit view. And now that we have this set up, I want to go and save settings. So this will save my view as this 2 view settings. Before we move on to exercise 3.5, another useful view, if we're doing profiles, is we need a profile view down here. And we can get that by right-clicking and going back to the view controls. So I'm going to go to view control. I'm going to first set it up by just one view. And that'll be, you can also use the function keys F1 or control F1 to take you back and set up your views. But I'm used to doing it on my mouse or doing it from the mouse, so I'll use my right click options to do that. So again, I'll go back to my right click options and hold, back to the view control. And before we showed how to do 2 views, plan in 3D. That's great, that's just going to give us, but if we're adding profiles to our existing lines and proposed right-of-way lines, what we'll want to do is come down to 3 views, a plan, profile, and 3D, and then select that. That will set up 3 views, 1 for plan, 1 for 3D, and if we follow the prompts, it's open a dynamic profile view. We'll select OK. and then we can go in and select on one of our right-of-way lines and select in our view 4 window, or the window down here, and then fit and fit. And again, we'll come in and save setting. So that is the first part of exercise 3.5, is setting up those views. So once we have the view set up, if I come back over again, so we're setting up the views to view a plan, or 3D and profile. We're now ready to set this terrain active for our existing right-of-way lines. But to do that, we're going to introduce a new tool up on the feature definition toggle toolbar up here that's docked at the top. We can use a match feature definition, since we already set feature definitions on our existing right-of-way lines and proposed. So I'm going to come in and click on this icon here, which is match feature definition, and then come and click on my feature definition. You'll notice that this now changes to match that feature. And then from here, I want to use active feature, because I want my active feature set, and it's easier to set it up by this toolbar up here and just match it. That way, if I go into any of these other tools, either horizontal or vertical, I don't have to set it within the tool. It's reading it from this, which I do a lot in designing. So again, I clicked on the match feature definition. I clicked on any line that has the feature for my existing right-of-way. I clicked on that, I matched it, and then I toggled on use active feature definition. Then I'll come back in my profile view, or before I do that, let me go to the element selection, and we have our view set up. So let's start with this first line up here. So I'm going to select it and then bring up the context menu. I want to open profile model and then click in that. So I'm opening the profile model for this line. And then I'll come into my view 4, which is profile existing right-of-way 4 for this line, and click on this existing ground. And again, once I hover over it and select it, I want to set as active profile. And when I do that, we'll notice if I zoom into my 3D, we just created a profile line for this existing right-of-way from the existing ground, and it'll show up here. So we're going to repeat that process for our existing and then proposed. So with the view set up, I'll click on another right-of-way existing line, hover over it, which will bring up the context menu. I'll click on the open profile model and click in the profile model view. And then in the profile model view, I will come in and select it and then hover over and set active. So I'm setting the existing ground active for my right-of-way lines. So let me do a couple more. So select it, context menu to bring up the open profile model. Click on this icon, select in my view, select the existing ground, and make it active. Do one more. So it's just repeating this process. So select, open your view, select that active, and select it. So that is all our existing. And you'll notice that there is a construction PM. So we're a reference 3D model. If I click on this view and bring up my level display, so I'll go to home, level display. So for my view 1, it created the default 3D and reference back in. So if I turn that off, it'll bring up my lines. So it's with the introduction of a 3D model, it references it back, which we always turn that off in our plan view. But we can just toggle that on and off, or turn that display off completely in our view 1. So we'll need to do that for the proposed. So again, we'll come up to the match feature definition and select on our lines. That'll change our feature definition to right-of-way line proposed. I'll toggle off use active feature definition and toggle it back on. And then we'll just repeat that process to set the existing ground active for these proposed profiles. So I'll go back to my element selection tool and select on the line, hover over it, bring up the context menu, open profile, click in my profile view, and then set the active ground active for the profile for existing. So repeat that for a couple more lines. So select it, open profile model, and then select in the open view and turn that on. So let me do one or two more. Select context menu, open profile, and select in the profile view and set as active profile. And our last couple lines. So that, now that we see in our 3D, we have profiles on all our existing right-of-way lines. So that was exercise 3.5, where we set up the views. We set up 3 views, a plan, a 3D, and a profile view. We then selected our lines, but first we match. So we match our feature definition to match the existing, set active, and then we clicked on our lines and opened the profile view in them. So now we're ready to view our cross-section lines in a dynamic cross-section. To do that, we'll need a alignment file to reference in. So we'll go up to our primary group, our attached tools. And one thing to note on this is it's going to attach the tool with the view that you're active in. So there's no references in this one. That's because my active view is view 4. So before I reference in the alignment file, I want to make sure I'm in the correct view and view 1, and you'll see how that dialog changed because we've already attached files in there. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're attaching or creating these, is to be in the correct view. So clicking on view 1, I'll see that I have references. I'll go back to attach tools, and this time I'm going to stay in the right-of-way or roadway folder. And I will attach my alignment file. I'll give it a logical name of ALGN and click OK. And you'll notice that I get a alignment file in here. So let me close my dialogues. And so I'm going to use this profile view as my cross section. Or I could do a right click and use the view control. And again, set up, a different views on here, just a plan and cross section, a plan super elevation cross section, plan profile cross section, plan cross section 3D. So there's different options to do that. But since I have 3 views, I can change this view and use it multiple different ways. So to view the dynamic cross sections, and this is 3.6, we'll go into the corridors tab. Click on that. Under the review group, there's your dynamic sections. So if I bring that down, that has different areas for your dynamic section. We're going to focus on the open cross-section view. And we can either do this by a corridor or an alignment. So we don't have a corridor, so we're going to base it off the alignment for now. So what I will do is select the alignment, and then I'll move to the left to define a left offset, and then right offset, and click set an interval for say 50, and then select our open view. I will select in this view down here, and we will see our right-of-way lines show up. We can change our view properties. So if we want to change this to 2.0, or 2. For the exaggeration, click back in there and then toggle through. Now you'll notice, and this is the difference between a dynamic cross-section from alignment or corridor, which we'll do a corridor here in a little bit. The first time or when you step through them, those disappear. So let me set that up again. So hit escape. I go to the dynamic cross sections. I'll click the alignment, locate my left offset, my right offset, parameter station where I'm going to begin, the interval, and this can range from 10, 25, 50, whatever you want to do. It's just going to step you through at that increment. So I'll leave it at 50, and then I'll select in this view. So you'll notice the first time they show up, if I try to walk through that view, they disappear. That's picking it from an alignment. So let's do a quick corridor. And that was jumping ahead of myself, and I apologize for that. So this is exercise 3.6. So what we'll want to do first is create a corridor. So we'll go to the Corridors tab, the Create Group, do Corridor, and it doesn't really matter what the stage is, so we can leave that on Preliminary. And what we'll want to do here is to select one of our alignments. And in order to get a corridor or a template on an alignment, it has to have a profile. So just a little FYI for you. But I want to put a corridor on this, and then I can locate profile, reset for active. So this has an active profile, which we see over in our 3D view over here. So I'm just going to right click and reset, and it's going to give me the name for 98. So we'll see it has a corridor. So now we have a corridor, and we want to go ahead and put a template or push a template down that. So we'll go to our new template drop and select our corridor. And then we'll come into our templates, click on the split button over here. We'll expand our template library out. So we'll click on the plus. We can go into, all right, so applying a template, we'll go into the examples for training, design 3D corridor templates, and we'll just do a simple, the RRR for 98 and select that. We'll data point to accept the template, and then we can come in and you can either do the Alt or just toggle on the lock to start, lock to end, and then data point through the tool. 25 is fine. This is just to see the difference in the cross section. So you'll see once we did that, we have a corridor, a template pushed down in our 3D model. We have the handles and the template guides here. So let's see how we have a different cross section now. So we'll go back to our Corridors tab, the Review Group, Dynamic Cross Sections, and this time in this tool, Locate Corridor or Alignment, we're going to locate the corridor. So we will select our corridor, and then it bypasses your left or right offset, just asks you to select or open the view. We have our view down here, so we'll select in that view, and zoom out, we will see our right-of-way lines in there. The nice thing about this is it will take us to the start, and we have in our plan view, this is where we're viewing this cross section at, and we can move up stations and zoom back in. So there's our right-of-way lines, and this is just a display of the two colors, which is okay when you do have them in your cross sections for your sheets. They will display correctly. So let me go in my view attributes. I want to center on backbone and then walk through, so that will center on that backbone, and I see the existing lines there and walk through. You can also right-click in your profile view, or cross-section view, I'm sorry. We can locate station via data point. So if we do that, we can select our plan or profile view. So if the plan, and now we can go anywhere that we want to along this US 98 alignment to view our cross-section. So if we would come up here, that would take us right to that cross-section. If we zoom out, we'll see our right-of-way lines. So that is how you get right-of-way lines in the RWDTRD, assign, create complex elements, and then set a feature definition, add in existing ground, add your profile, and then we can view them in dynamic cross sections. So this file would get referenced into your design or even your RDXSRD file for sheets, and then annotation group will apply the annotation when you add this file to a sheet, and that is described in the plan development training guide for that, so go view that resource training guide and also the videos for that. So that is chapter 3 of the Roadway Existing Modeling Guide. So thank you for joining me today for the CAD Office series for FDOTConnect. This was chapter 3 from the Roadway Design Existing Modeling Guide, going over right-of-way lines. Thank you.